Okay, hi. I am David Turner, and I am teaching this course, Computer Science 405 Server Programming in the winter quarter of 2012. And this is this class is being taught online. This is my first video that I will have created for this class. And up to this point, it's already been 2 weeks into the quarter, and I haven't done any video recording up to this point, and the reason is that these exercises that have been scheduled have been fairly straightforward to do using the written instructions, and but in subsequent exercises, and there's not too many, that the the instructions are remained succinct like the earlier instructions, but there's some material that's being covered there that most of the people in the class will not be very familiar with, and so I wanted to create this video and perhaps subsequent videos to add some more detail of to your understanding as you go through the rest of the exercises. These are not required videos to view. If you have suggestions on how I can improve the videos, please let me know. So let me go. This is what we're going to do today is this this January 25 assignment, which is to set up Jquery. And you'll notice I give a lot of links here to documentation. There's an awful lot of reading to do, and in fact, if you want to truly master the topics and the skills that are being covered in this class, you really need to spend a lot of time familiarizing yourselves with these references, as well as other references that I don't even list. But there's much reading to do. And I also want to throw in that it's very important to experiment with implementations to verify that you're understanding what it is that you're reading. So let's go ahead and get started on this Jquery setup assignment. And that the purpose of this assignment is to just get going with Jquery, how to create a Google App Engine, a Java project that uses Jquery for the Jquery user interface, and also uses Jquery for the Ajax functionality that's provided through Jquery's core library. And these are two uses of the Jquery library or libraries that we're going to rely on through the rest of the quarter. So here I'm asking you to create a project. I had named it test up until this point. I just renamed it to Jquery. So we've created other projects so far in the class. They've been given simple names, and this project I would like you to call it Jquery. If you've already started these instructions and you've called it test or something else, that's fine. It's not a problem. It just makes it a little easier for me to evaluate student work if the naming of projects and other elements are consistent across the class, and I can see things and understand them more quickly that way. So here we need to before I jump into that, let me take a look at this this overview, and I probably don't need to. You can read this. This is a good. Well, I wrote the overview. I think it's good. You need to read that and understand the concepts that I'm talking about in there. It's not that hard to read. So let's go ahead and create a project and do that. So we want to create a web application project called Jquery. Let's do that. So I'm going to go into. I'm working on Windows today. I also work on Mac, and but today I'm going to work on Windows. And what I did was I simplified my environment a little bit. I just created a new instance of what you should be looking at. If you're working on Windows, it's a folder called 405. You could put it anywhere you like. You don't have to call it 405 in fact, but that's what I refer to it as, with that name in the instructions. So let's go ahead and start up Eclipse. And there's the workspace. You can use multiple workspaces. Well, and here's the Eclipse interface, and this is kind of a fresh setup of Eclipse. So I'm going to clear these panes, or those views. Actually, in Eclipse documentation they're called views. I don't use those views, so I'm going to clear those. Let's create a project. So it's new. Sorry about that. I'm not using a mouse today. This is, here it is, Web Application Project. That's a choice that was added to the menu by the Google plugin that we installed. Project name is Jquery. I'm just going to scan down here. Oh, I see. Use Google Web Toolkit. We're going to take that off. I'd like to turn that on. I'd like to do some investigation into that, but I wanted to pare down a little bit on the tools in the class, and not use too many tools. I didn't want to overwhelm everyone with too many tools, but I believe that this Google Web Toolkit is probably a good tool to use. I've never used it, and I may cover that in future versions of the class. But let's take that off for now. Use a Google App Engine. Yeah, this is what we need to leave checked. And oh, we need a package. And I think we've been using CSE405 and then we have the project name in there is the second element of the package string. That will be created. Takes a moment. And so here's some of the code that's originally generated when you create a project. You'll see here's the package CSE405.jQuery. We put that into the creation screen, project creation screen. Here's a servlet that was generated for us called jQuery servlet. Just says hello world. And let's look at the rest of this. This JDO config, this is I think that's Java data objects. As this is the XML view of that file. You'll see two tabs down here. I'm going to just select the other tab. And this is the plain view of the XML file. So, you know, in more and more these days, especially in Java development, a lot of configuration is done through XML files. So you'll see that what we have is an XML file here. And this is some configuration about the data store. So every Google App Engine project has configuration to interact with the data store. And this is the default settings, and of course these can be modified. So we're going with those default settings. I don't believe we will change any of these throughout the course, but it's certainly worth learning about if you want to dig into the documentation on the data store. In fact, I've done that, and I need to continue reading more. I'm new to the data store that's provided through the Google App Engine SDK. So I need to continue with my reading and experiments to understand more about that. Of course, that's something you need to do as well. Log4j Properties. This here is a configuration file for the one of the loggers that's used in the system. It's called the Log4j logger. And I can see in here that these are names that are associated with the data store. I don't think Google implemented this data store. It was another company. And this other company used Log4j, the Log4j logging system, as it's logging for logging support. So there's actually 2 loggers in the system. I haven't tried using that logger, but I believe that we can use that if we wanted to. But what I'm going to do is show how to use the logger that's a part of Java itself. And here's the configuration for that logger. So logging.properties, see the naming, this name is required, log4j.properties, that's the required name. Logging.properties, I believe that's a required name. And this is a configuration file for the logger that's built into Java. And let's see here. There's some comment, comment here that talks about this. You'll see that the log level is set to warning. And I haven't, so far when I've gone through these exercises myself, I haven't done anything with this logging configuration. But if you want anything to appear, you have to log at the warning level or worse. So you can't say log at the debug level or the info level. It has to be more serious. It has to be a warning or an error or fatal. I think those are the distinctions. So that's logging. We'll take a look at that perhaps later. This is all, by the way, under this WebINF folder. And WebINF is under a folder called WAR. And WAR is short for Web Archive. And this name is arbitrary. It could be anything. Although you do need to be concerned with changing the configuration if you change that name. So there's some configuration. If you wanted a different name, you'd have to change the something in the build path. Now, just the Google App Engine plugin happens to use WAR as the name of that file, and I've seen it other names used. In fact, I've used the name Web in the book that I have online, and so that's arbitrary. And this folder here is what you can think of as it's the container of the deployable web application. All of the files and directories that constitute the web application that you can deploy to a server, so that they're contained in this WAR folder. Anything outside of the WAR folder, like this source folder with the servlet source code in here, these are not directly deployed to the web container or to the servlet engine. The web server goes by many names actually. So the web server, for instance, when you run locally, the web server is configured just to look inside this WAR directory. When you upload your deployable web application to the Google Cloud, you're uploading the contents of this WAR folder. You're not uploading anything else. Of course, the source code here, like this Java source code, is compiled, and the compiled result is copied into this WAR folder. So this source code results in another file called class file or bytecode file, which gets written into the WAR folder and then becomes a part of the deployable material that's uploaded to Google or that's given to the locally running web server. By the way, the locally running web server is an instance of Jetty. Now, Jetty is the name of an open source project. It's a widely used web server, or a J2EE web container. That's another name for it. It's a J2EE web container, Java 2 Enterprise Edition web container. It's also referred to as a servlet container. It's a container of servlets. It's a way of running servlets in a web server instance. Most of my career has been involved with using Tomcat. Tomcat is also another open source project which is heavily used in industry, widely used in industry. These are both free open source projects. And Jetty and Tomcat are very mature projects, and they're essentially the same. There's not much difference between the two of them. There's a little bit of difference in the configuration, but it's quite minor. Let's see, what else can we talk about here? Let's run this thing. Let's make sure before we do anything else that we can in fact run this. But now before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the run configurations. It's an important concept to understand when you're working in Eclipse, or in fact when you're working in any IDE. These run configurations, if they're not called run configurations in another IDE, they're called something else, but they're likely called run configurations. Let's go up to this run menu, and you see there's an item there called run configurations. And this will show you a list of run configurations that are grouped by type of application. There looks like there's one thing in there. It looks like when I created the Jquery project, a run configuration was automatically generated for me. And you'll see that basically the run configuration is configuration that tells Eclipse or the Google plugin or whatever plugin is supporting the project that you're working in. It tells the system how to launch your application. And you can modify things. You can, for instance, modify arguments that appear on the command line. So these are the program arguments. It's already showing you this is pre-generated. Look at this. See, the war directory is specified in these program arguments. Now these arguments are needed by the code that launches Jetty. It could be that Jetty, in fact, processes this line right here. And we can modify that. We can add to it. This is the JRE. Oh, this reminds me, this needs to be modified. With the Google App Engine, with the plugin that we're using, we need to use the version 6 or 1.6. So it should show JRE 6 here. And so we're going to need to change that. So there's some other things that we can look at. These are the class path. This is called the Runtime Classpath. This is different than the build time class path. This is how to look at it actually. And so that's it. That's the run configuration. And a given project that can have several run configurations. And you just give them different names here. Then when you launch the run configuration, and you select the one that you want. Like so, we can launch the application right from here. So I'm going to click Run. And I notice that it pops open a console window for us. I double click on that tab and study the output. And this is important. You should be glancing at this output and look for error messages. It's common that you'll have errors in here. So if you skip over this logging output, you're going to waste time because you're going to go to the browser, you're going to go to some page that doesn't show correctly, you're going to start thinking I've got to dig into the issues, but you could catch all that in advance by just glancing at the logging output when you start the server and look for exceptions that are thrown, right, or fatal or error level error messages that appear there. There's another view that I want to recommend to you, and this will help you avoid a lot of errors as you stop and start the web server for testing. And you access that view up here. Go to Window, Show View, and it's called Debug. I don't see it in the list here, so let's select Other. This is an abbreviated list. This is the full list. If I go to Other, and I look under the debug folder, and I find the debug view. Let's just open that. Now that view by default displays in this panel down here as a tab pane. And this is the instance of the of Jetty that we're running right now. And we can in fact stop. If I right click on this, I can terminate. I can terminate and relaunch. So this is the best way to shut down and restart your application. Let's go ahead and terminate this. And now if I want to make changes, sometimes what we do is make changes to configuration files, and then we want to restart that. I'm going to right click on this node here and select relaunch. And it pops me over to this console tab, and I can glance and see that there's no errors there. Now let's go ahead and test, and you'll see actually in the console window here, the loggers in the logging output, it's giving us two links. This is a link here. This is how we can access the running application. I don't have a mouse today, so there we go. I'm going to copy that. And there's another link that it gives, which is right here. And this is a link to the what's called the admin interface. And this lets us access the data store that's running locally, not the data store that's running in the Google Cloud. It's the data store that's created and provided locally. Now we're not going to look at the data store today, but I think in the next assignment you need to start working with the data store. So you'll find it useful to go to this link. It's a local link. You see, it's localhost 8888. That's the port number, and it's a local host. So it gives you this admin interface. It's for testing, and you can clear the data store and examine it and create things and so on as the application is running. Let's go ahead and take a look here at our test code. So we haven't modified the code at all. We're just running it. So I hit enter on that, and there it is. Okay, hello app engine. Now this file here is actually index.html. This is the view that's being displayed here. So if I omit the path, the full path, the fully qualified path to this file, which is right here, then it will show me this index.html. And the reason for that is that it's been configured, and I'll show that to you in a moment. Before I jump into that, I want to say that this here, this URL it contains a host name and a port number. The host name is needed for the browser to locate the IP address of the server. And once it has the IP address of the server, it also needs to know the port number that the server is listening on, so it can make a TCP connection to that port number at that IP address. So that's the purpose of this part of the URL. Well, not that slash. And from this point on, and by the way, the host name in here is case insensitive. But to the right of that part of the URL, the characters that are displayed in here can be case sensitive. I think with Internet Information, i.e., what's it called? Windows Internet Information Service or Server, IIS, that it'll take upper and lower case in this part of the path. I'm not sure. I would guess so. But there's that's unreliable to rely on on cases being made equivalent. So this is a case, essentially a case-sensitive part of the URL. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong there. I'm running on Windows. Let's put an uppercase D right there, and I'll hit enter. And so this is not case-sensitive at this point.
But if I go to this URL, let's see if that's case sensitive. This is jQuery. Well, let's see if we make that an uppercase Y. You'll see that we can't get to the same resource. So the index.html, I would guess that if you're running on Linux or Macintosh, which is an operating system that uses case-sensitive file names, that index.html may not work if you include in the URL cases that are not identical to what the file is named in the file system. I'm guessing that that's the case. We can't test that at this moment, but for sure that that the case for addressing servlets, that this is in fact case sensitive. So that's just something to look out for. So here's the result of our servlet. By the way, see that hello world? That's being generated from the servlet right here. Print line hello world. What else can we say here? I'm going to go back to the home. Once again, this doesn't appear to be case sensitive in this moment. And here's the link to the servlet. That goes like that. And this, now I want to explain about why index.html is what is rendered when we go to the root. And that's because of this configuration file, Web XML. Let's look at that. And it's the welcome file list here. So the welcome file list is a list of file names that you're telling the web server to use to satisfy requests for a folder, rather than a path to a servlet. So so we could change that. If we made this index.htm, and we would have to create another file called let's try that. Let's call that index2.html. Let's see what happens. Now if I save this, now look at this, we're saving the Web XML file. And let's look down the console window. I don't see anything going on in there. Look at this warning, by the way. No file found for jQuery with an uppercase Y. So they're giving us a warning when it can't find that. Now the question is this. We have modified the Web XML file. Now does that change? Is that change reflected in the running instance of our application right now? Let's test it. I know with Tomcat that this change will not propagate to the running instance. We will need to shut down and restart the web application because this is a configuration file. If we modify a servlet, we don't have to shut down and restart the application because the new bytecode will be swapped in to the virtual machine, the Java virtual machine, on the fly without having to restart the web server. Let's test this. Let's go back and hit refresh. I don't see that there's any difference. Let's go ahead, let's go to this debug tab here. I'm going to right click on this node in that tree. I'll terminate and relaunch. There we go. Looks good. Now let's go back to the browser and let's reload this. And remember, we've modified the welcome file. As you can see, forbidden. We can't access anything. But if we rename this index2, let me see if I can rename that. To rename that, you'll notice there's no rename command there. I think it's a refactoring. You have to go to refactor, then rename, and whoops. Let's make that index2. I'll modify the file name here. And this is, the web server is actually hitting this folder and the contents in it. So let's go ahead and reload, and there it is. All right, I'll turn that back. I'll need to refactor, rename. Let's go ahead and set that back. Now I want to show another thing. So we've seen that we need to restart the web server for changes to this web XML file to propagate. Just test that again. Let's go ahead and reload. And we do that by going to this debug tab and terminate and relaunch. Look for errors. Yeah, it looks good. So we see that changing web XML, some of the other configuration files, probably you need to restart the server. If you make changes to this app engine, if you make changes to this logging file, you will likely need to restart the engine. Well, let's make a change to the servlet, and we're going to say from hello world, we're going to say goodbye world. Goodbye world. I'm going to save the servlet. Now, we don't have to compile because it builds on the fly. It does incremental building for us. And look down here. There's no indication of any reloading of the servlet going on down here. But in fact, I believe that it is reloaded. If we click on this link, we see that it still says hello world. Now, I think this is coming out of the browser cache. So I hit reload. I think we're going to get goodbye world, but we don't, so I'm wrong. And what do you know? So this is here, and in fact, we're not getting anything. All right, good. So I'm wrong. That change apparently needs a restart of the web application. I think there's a setting. Let's terminate and relaunch. Actually, I know with Tomcat, I'm not that familiar with Jetty, but with Tomcat, there's configuration that you set to say whether to scan the class files and look for changes to compiled code to see if they need to be reloaded. Actually, if it's done, there's the goodbye world. It's done on a kind of there's an interval of time. Let's try that again. I'm going to change that to hello world. Let's see if we just wait, maybe it'll reload. So I saved that, and I'm reloading this. It still says goodbye world. I changed it back to hello. Let's see if in fact anything comes through if I wait, say, up to a minute. They call this something like hot redeployment. I think that's the term they use. We could dig in and try to figure out how to get that to work right. Maybe it has to do with the run configuration. Let's take a look really quickly. And let's see here. This is App Engine. We're going to look at this. Maybe there's an argument that we could pass in here to tell it to scan the folder with the class files in it to see, or the class path, to scan the class path to look for changes in files that have been loaded into the virtual machine. I'm not sure that there's anything there. Anyway, I don't see it in there. Let's close that. We'll try it. Okay, now we've waited long enough. Let's see if there's any changes. No changes. So in fact, you have to restart the application for changes to servlets to come through. All right, let's go back to the web page here and read on. So what we're going to do is get Jquery and do that. So we go to the Jquery website, And here it is. This is the link to the Jquery user interface library. Now here we could download the core Jquery library. But we don't need to do that. And the reason is when we download the user interface library, we will get a folder that contains the core Jquery library in it. And I think it's smarter just to use that one because the UI library that we're downloading is built to work with that version of the core Jquery library. So I think that's a safer way to go. So we're going to do one download. Here is the, you see the URL has changed. It's kind of an extension to Jquery, I suppose. That's what you want to call it. And here, when you get the library, you actually customize it. So if you want it to look gray or blue or round or square, whatever, there's a bunch of settings that you can play with. You're going to get essentially the same API to access the library, but the decorations, the color scheme, and some of the other visual elements that that you can set. So what you do is you build a custom download. So you click that, and you'll see theme. Like, you can change your theme. This is UI lightness. You can make it, smoothness or whatever. And this is also the core Jquery library. Which one do you want to use? The 1.7.3 or 1.8.17. I think I'll just use the one that's default. In fact, I'm going to leave this theme setting on the default, but you can in fact change that. It's not a big deal. You can change that. Now this makes a difference. What you decide to download, what components of the library. I mean, the safest way to do it is just download everything. Of course, that makes the size of your library larger, so that there's going to be more when users hit your site, they're going to end up transmitting more bytes from the server. If you're paying for bandwidth, it's going to increase your bandwidth expense. So you might want to whittle down the size of the library by deselecting elements that you're not going to use. But for our purposes, let's leave everything selected for now. Oh, by the way, there's also another way to save on bandwidth, and that is to use Google's Jquery. I forget what they call it, but basically you can have the user retrieve instances of the Jquery library from Google servers. So that will not cost you any bandwidth, and looks like it's pretty straightforward and simple to configure. And that's of course what I would recommend that you do. And then you can, but actually that will only apply to the core library. So you can have the users download the core library from Google servers without any cost to you, any bandwidth expense. But the customized version of the UI library, the CSS files and the image files, I think, are not in Google's servers, although maybe the UI JavaScript file is in there. Now let's go ahead and download this. Getting off on a tangent a little bit there. And here it is, it's coming down. Let's see where we're going to put this. So I'm going to just move that to my 405 folder. And let me extract that here. Taking a little longer than I thought. There we go. It opened up a window for me in there. And you'll see that there's an index file, and then there's 3 folders. And what you need is these 2 folders. So let's copy those. And we need to put those in the war folder right here. I'm going to right click and paste. There it is. We've dropped in these 2 folders. Let me explain. Here is the jQuery core library. And it's a minimized version of the library. Let's double click that and take a look. So, you'll see the variable names, the function names, they've all been made small. And superfluous white space has been removed. So, and the purpose of this is to make the size of the download as small as possible. You can also use a developer's version of the library, which is not minimized. So the developer version would then have all the extra white space in there to make it easier to read, and would have longer names that were more descriptive of the functions and variables. Now, this is the core library, and the Ajax API is in there, as well as other elements of the core library. And this other one is something happening with my system. And it looks like I'm crashing here. Unhandled event loop exception. Oh, that's interesting. Garbage collection overhead limit exceeded. An out-of-memory error has occurred. Do you want to exit the workbench? I think we can. Let's go ahead and do that. Looks like there's a bug there. Let's start up again. That's good. I didn't have to terminate Eclipse. It sort of interrupted itself and let me restart. All right, let me take this out. I don't know if maybe this is the problem actually. And I'll leave that like that. The other file in here, and that is a file, this is the JavaScript for the user interface library of jQuery. Now the CSS folder, look at that. We've got a subfolder called UI Lightness, and in there we have the CSS file that's used by the jQuery user interface library. Then there's another folder called Images, and you'll see in there I've got all kinds of stuff. Things like used to make round buttons and so on. There it is. So this is part of the visual components of the library. That's all created for us. So those 2 folders need to be copied over. And let's go back to here. And yeah, I'm talking about this business here. And we need to load those, the CSS file. We need to load the 2 JavaScript files in our web page. So let's go ahead and grab this. But the names of those files I have on the web here are likely to be different from the ones that we downloaded. Let's just quickly look at that, and you'll see that that this is jQuery 1.7.1. Here I have jQuery 1.6.2. So since the time I wrote this, jQuery has published newer versions of its core library. So these will have to be modified. I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's go into index.html, and I'm just going to paste this right in like that. Do I want to keep that up there? Let me see, maybe I'll do something like this. And paste that in there. So I have this doc type. Now, this is Google's declaration. In fact, I kind of like that. I think they have a conservative choice there. And they have some explanation here about quirks mode that, we could, this declaration here, this doc type indicates HTML5. And that won't be probably not as well supported in older browsers as this simple declaration up here that was inserted in there for us by the Google App Engine plugin. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that, although either one will work for the purpose of this course. Now, what I have here, this is a script element. You'll notice I don't have any, in fact, maybe that's not going to work because I'm not, I don't have a head section here. Maybe I should have a head section. I'll leave it. I'll see how it goes. No, I changed my mind. I'm going to do this. Completely changed my mind. I'm going to use the new declaration here for the HTML5 style declaration. I'm omitting a head section. I'm omitting the body element and so on. And I'm following HTML5 conventions, letting the browser create those elements for me, rather than declaring them. Because every web document needs to have an HTML root element, which is omitted here. So the browsers, even old browsers, are already creating this for us. So that's an adopted convention. HTML is feel free to omit the HTML element, feel free to omit the head element, and so on. All right, let's fix these. These references are not right. And the easiest way to do that is to come out here and open up this index.html file. This is from the library that we downloaded. Let's take a look here. This is my 405 workspace, and this is the zip file that I unpacked. Here is the CSS folder, the JS folder. This development bundle, this is not needed. This is documentation and so on. This, look at this. I think this is the non-compressed version of the Jquery library. Let's just let's verify that that's the case. There it is. In fact, see, this is the readable version. If you want to study how Jquery is constructed, because I mean, you could write the Jquery library. It's all done in JavaScript. You can read through the code basically, and you can see this is where they're defining this $sign character. The most important thing to note here is this Jquery. Jquery is it's a JavaScript object, right? Actually, it's a function, and well, here's the invocation of a function. So this is this parenthesis right there. Let's see where that's matched up. Probably all the way down the bottom here. Well, it's huge. Must be a faster way to get there. I'm not sure how to get to it using Notepad++. I just started using this. Where would that be? The end of that. But anyway, you'll see that we don't want to dig into this now, but this is worth reading to see how the library is implemented. This is the main thing. This is the Jquery object. And by the way, the Jquery object, there's $. When you see $, like here, see this $sign document, this is equivalent to doing Jquery document. So this $sign is a synonym for this Jquery variable, and we could search for where that is set. This is something related to that, And we would have to go and find that wherever it is. Looks like we're going pretty fast here. Let's keep looking to see if we can find that, where that's defined. Actually, no. Where is that defined? Maybe what we looked at is where it's actually created. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Does this line right here, does this line, what does this do? Map over the $ in case of overwrite. I think the $ is defined later on in the library. This it'll look something like, you know, later on it'll look something like this. It'll be you know, window dot $. So window is the what's called the global object. It's the what do they call that? The global scope. So it'll look something like this, something like that, or it'll just be $ equals jQuery. The $ becomes a, you know, a globally scoped identifier that's simply another reference to this jQuery object right there. So I'm not going to save that. So that's worth tinkering with, and save the file. No, but we don't need this stuff. This is you know, demos and documentation, so we can ignore that. Let's open this index.html file, and there it is. These are the you know, this is like your example, and so we're just going to pull this out of the example. In fact, we could open the example here. Just double click on that. So welcome to this, and there is some documentation here, and look what you get. I mean, this is, you know, date picker. This is great. Things like this. Look at that. Progress bar. Look at that. So once again, I just grab those 3 lines. I want to paste them over top of these. These lines are for loading the CSS file, the core library, and the UI library. And I don't need spaces there. Take those out. And this, some initialization code here, and title, button, paragraph. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So, are we running? No, we're not running, because we restarted, didn't we? Let's go ahead and start things off. I'm going to right-click the jQuery project and do debug as web application. Now, when I did that, did I run the existing? There's the console window. Okay, did I create a new run configuration when I did that? Where's the run configurations? No, I didn't. I'm using the same one. Okay, so this is, in fact, we launched this in debug mode. That means we can set breakpoints. And we could have launched it like this. If we had launched it as run as web application instead of debug as web application. So we did debug as web application. If you debug as web application, you can set breakpoints in the servlets and examine the state of variables and so on. But you can't set a breakpoint if you do run as web application. One difference, other than not being able to set breakpoints, is, you know, run as is going to run faster, right? Because you're you don't have the debugger running. So let's go ahead and take a look. This is, let's go to the root. There's our button, get message. And let's take a look at what just got rendered there. So we know about these. This is the CSS file. This is the core library. This is the UI library. These are being loaded. Here's a script section that does initialization. This is the title. So this jQuery example is in a title element, and that appears in the browser's tab here, jQuery example. Because the browser's free to do what they want, but this is what they do. The browsers put that string that's in a title element in their tab display here. So that's clear. That's title, and then we have this button element, and the text in there says get message. And if I just say get message exclamation point and save that, then you'll see that when I reload, the exclamation point comes by. So this is just the rendered message. You know, if we right click here and view the page source, you'll see this is what we're looking at, right? This is the get message. Now, if you look at this this button object, we set the ID here, but we don't, you know, the rounded edges here, the way we get the mouse over effects and the color, the blue and the orange when we mouse over, we didn't set any of that. We didn't specify any CSS. What we did was is we told jQuery to set those for us. And how did we do that? Well, we gave the button has got this ID attribute. So this is the name of this element instance. So this here is a button element. This is the start tag. This is, I need a mouse. This is the start tag of this element. This is the end tag of this element. And this is the contents of the button element. Altogether, this whole section right here is comprises the element. Now this element exists as an object in what's called the document object model, the DOM. And the web page here is a document. It's an HTML document, and the browser maintains an internal object-oriented representation of this HTML document. And it's this internal object-oriented representation that's referred to as the DOM, or the document object model. Our JavaScript can read and modify the document because it is as if you can read and modify the document through an interface that's object-oriented. Now this element here is represented by an instance of an object that we can retrieve from inside JavaScript. And how do we retrieve the instance of this button object? We have to use its ID. Well, I mean, there's other ways of doing it, but we have to identify that this is the element that we want. Give me the DOM object that represents this element, because I want to modify that DOM object. So which DOM object is it? It's the DOM object with this ID. That's what this syntax is all about right there. Not the dot part. The ID is message ID. Now the message ID, obviously it appears in there. That's the same name. Now this hash mark right there, the purpose of that hash mark, that's called a CSS Selector. The hash mark is an indicator to jQuery that we want the element that has an ID set to message button.
And IDs have to be unique in the document, so there can only be one element with ID equal to message button. There could be another button or a paragraph or something else with ID equal to message button 2. But we can't have another element with the same ID message button. So now in cascading style sheets in CSS, we can specify style rules that modify the way this button element is rendered. When we do that, we can put the style rule right inside the element using a style attribute. Like that. So let's see if that does anything. And that overrides the style that's been assigned to the button, which is set through JavaScript actually, and well, through a class assignment. And the thing is that that the CSS can be set here, or the CSS can be set up here. So we could do something like this. We could do I think it's called style. Not sure about that. It's been a while. And this will be message button. So this thing here, let's do this color green just to see if we'll see a change. That this is called the selector. This selects, you know, the 0 or more elements in the document, and this is the style rule that's applied to those selected elements. Let's see if that comes through. There it is, green. So this thing here is a CSS selector. Now what Jquery does is it says, okay, I'm going to use CSS selector. So Jquery has this lookup function, and what it by the way that library is built, it simply uses the same syntax that this CSS uses for doing selection of elements. This selects an individual element. There's other ways you can select groups of elements, sets of elements, using other syntax. Now there's the name, and you'll see it's a string, so we have it in quotes. And by the way, these are single quotes, but double quotes work as well. That's also okay. I'll save that. You'll see that this is okay. But if we omit the quote and do something like that, that won't work. So let's try that. See, now we get an ordinary button. This is the unformatted button. Jquery is not operating on this button. And in fact, what we'll do here, let's open up the JavaScript Console under Tools and JavaScript Console. You'll see there is an error message. Uncaught syntax error, unexpected token. And let's go ahead and fix that. Let's use single apostrophes. That's the style that I've been using recently for JavaScript. And let's reload the page and see that this gets the styling and the error message goes away. Let's try that. There's fact. Now we get the styling, the JavaScript error message is gone. So what is going on here is that this, no, it's this one here. This $sign is a synonym for Jquery, I believe. I hope I'm right here. Let's try it. Let's go ahead and reload this, and that in fact works. Okay, got it right. And if we were to use something else, once again we're going to get an error message. So let's try Jquery 2. Yes, in fact, there is the JavaScript. Jquery 2 is not defined. So $sign is shorthand for this Jquery object. So in this Jquery object here, by the way, is is a function. And so that's why we use this syntax. This is the argument list. This is where we're naming the function, and we're invoking it here. So this here is the invocation of the jQuery function. Now, JavaScript functions are objects, so I'm referring to the jQuery object. And it's consistent with calling jQuery function as well, because functions are, in fact, objects. This syntax wouldn't be acceptable if jQuery were not a function, by the way. And so let's go back to the abbreviated version with $. So this function, jQuery function, oh, darn it, no mouse, it's hard to work without a mouse. The invocation of this function, now functions do things. When we call that function, it doesn't have any side effects. But what it returns a value. And it returns a jQuery object. And the jQuery object that it returns is a wrapper around the DOM button element here. And so we were going to get that wrapper. Let's do it like this. This is the jQuery button wrapper object, just to be explicit about it here. So that function returns that jQuery button wrapper object. And so it's a jQuery. It's an object created in the jQuery library, and it's used to wrap the underlying button object. And so this wrapper has a function called button. So what we do is we invoke the function. And what the function does is it modifies the button element. And let's take a look at that. First of all, let's verify that this is the case. Let's go ahead and reload this. Okay, there it is. Now, if we call button 2 on it, right, we're going to get an error message. It's undefined. Button 2 is undefined. Object has no method button 2. So you can see that we're trying to invoke on an object a function called button 2. We lose our styling as well, notice that. Now what does this button function do? It's pretty simple. What it does is it inserts a class attribute inside the button object. And that class attribute references classes that are in the jQuery CSS file, not the images. This one here. So in this file is a lot of classes, CSS classes that are defined. And when we call button here on the wrapper around the element, it inserts the class attribute into this button object. How do we know that? Well, we can use the web developer tools that are built into your browser. And all browsers support this, or at least I think they do, most of the major browsers. Let's reload the document first of all. And if you look in here, you'll see we get a list of elements. Now look at this. Now, this is what I talk about with HTML5, and acknowledges what browsers do. See this, by the way, this is our document object model. This is our document. This is how the browser. This is what the browser constructs when it parses our web page. It's missing an HTML element. Look, we left it out. There's no HTML element, but it inserts it in there for us. There's no head element. It inserts it in there for us. And then it puts the title. This is only one place for a title element, in the head element. So the browser is smart enough to put the title element in the head section because that's the only place that it could go legally. And then here's the script section in there.
But now look at this. In the body element, here is the button. This is the button class. And oh, look at what jQuery did. So when we called button, it did a little bit more. What it did was it in this button element, see button ID equals message button, button ID equals message button. It added a class attribute, and he set the class attribute to this value. Now these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different classes. So this is a space-delimited list of class names. These class names are defined up here in this CSS file that comes with the library, and that's where we get the blue color, the mouse over effects, the rounded edges here. All that comes from the association of these classes with this button object. Now, what else the library did was it created a span element within the button element. We assigned yet another jQuery class to that called UI button text, and this button function moved our get message text into that new sub element. So this was performed by jQuery. I want to try to, can I edit this? Delete node, edit, copy. There we go. I'll copy HTML. Let's copy that HTML, and let's paste it in here. So we're going to have our alternative for this button element. So you know, we didn't need to call button in the jQuery library. We can comment it out right there. And instead, we could have created the document with this class definition inserted right in there. It also has another thing, like it's got a role attribute. Put that in there, and then it's got this this other attribute. All right, that's a part of the library. So I'm going to take out hours. Now watch this. This is essentially equivalent. I'll go ahead and reload the page. You'll see it's the same effect. We get the same thing. We didn't run this button function, and that's essentially equivalent. Now let me back out of there. I'm going to take that out. And so that's in fact what's happening there. And normally we don't break it all out like this. We use the compressed expression. Looks just like that. We select. Oh, by the way, this lookup function here, this jQuery lookup function, this is the jQuery function. What it does is it's a search function. It's like a query. It's like, you can think of it as like a database query, and it returns a result set. Now, if the result set has a single item in it, then we get the wrapper around that item, and we invoke the function on that wrapper directly. But if the query results in multiple matches, so maybe there's multiple elements in the document that are selected with this CSS Selector expression, then what jQuery returns is a collection. That in the collection includes the wrapper instances of all the elements that got matched, and the collection implements all of the functions available on the wrappers. When we call the button function on jQuery's collection element, what it does is it iterates through all the child elements, which are wrappers, and calls their button function. So that's how the jQuery works. It's very important to understand, you know, what these expressions are actually doing. So that's the reason I'm taking the time to explain this. So that's a lot of talk about what's going on right there. Now let's continue on and look at the rest of the of what's happening here. I know it's a long video,
There's a lot to cover here. What this, of course, we need to talk about that as well. Let's go through the inside of this function first. This formats the button. This registers a click event handler with the button. So once again, we have the same selector expression here. So we're getting basically we're getting the jQuery wrapper around the button object, and that wrapper obviously has a function called click. And what that function does is that function, the click function that's supported by this wrapper object, the click function takes a single argument, and that single argument is a function. It's a callback function. So when the user clicks the button in the browser, the callback function is invoked. And a callback function can be defined, is typically defined anonymously inside the call to click, or whatever function is being called with a callback function. So this is a standard kind of technique or organization that you'll see in JavaScript. So once again, click. This call to click is a call to a function we're passing a function instance and registering that function instance as a click handler. Now we could have done this. Watch this. We could have said that the function, we're going to name the function. It won't be an anonymous function. We're going to name the function. We're going to call it my func, or I got a better one, my click handler. Let me spell it right. My click handler. So this is when this is my function. It's called my click handler. When it's called, I'm going to execute this line. In fact, let's do a line that's easier to understand. It's just to say alert hi. By the way, this is the kind of experimentation that you need to be doing in this class to comprehend the material. You should be hacking away at this code, making hypotheses and testing your hypotheses in a very much the same way. So so please be busy doing that. So here's the click handler. When this thing gets invoked, we're going to just pop up an alert window that says hi in there. Now we need to register the click handler in here. I'm going to paste that in there. There it is. So we inside this function runs when the document loads. We format the message button, format the button. We define a function called myClickHandler. We pass a reference to the myClickHandler function into the click function that's available on the message button object. And that means whenever the user clicks the button, the handler will run. Let's see. Let's test that. Now we need to reload the web page. Right, so we still have the old web page. Let's go ahead and reload the web page. And we can verify that we did things right. If we look at the head section here and the script, we'll see, yeah, here's our changes. Let's click this. There it is. There's our hi window. Okay, so that's what's going on there. This is the click handler that gets called. Now let's take a look at this other code that we just commented out and try to understand this. This is an Ajax call. What we're doing here is we're saying on this element, on this message button element. Oh, sorry, that's not a message button. We're matching against something else. Now we're looking for the element with ID equal to message, and that's in fact this paragraph down here. The paragraph is originally empty. You know, it doesn't have to be empty. Let's put something in there. Let's go ahead and put something in there.
So there is a paragraph there. There's the 1, 2, 3. There's a paragraph element in the web page, and we identify it here. Keep forgetting I don't have a mouse here. I got a touchpad. It's very inconvenient. So here, this is where we get the jQuery wrapper object around our paragraph element that we have down here. And that wrapper object has a load function, and that results in a jQuery request. I'm sorry, an Ajax request, or what's called it's called an XML. What do they call it? An XML HTTP request. I think that's what it is. And this is the foundation of Ajax, is this object, or in Internet Explorer something that's equivalent to it. So what we're doing there is we're calling this. This is a high-level helper function that's part of the jQuery's Ajax API load. And what we're doing is we're saying, load this URL. This is a URL test. Load this URL and go and retrieve the web page. Go and retrieve from the web server whatever it has to give us from this URL, and whatever you get, paste it into this element. Now, I want to make some corrections here. This is the test. Let's see. Aldo Lewis and I, by the way, were working on this together just the other day, and we were getting some of the bugs out in these instructions. I think we have test here. Did I say to rename the servlet? No, I don't think so. So I'm going to modify my instructions here. And bear with me while I improve things. So this, we don't want test. We want this. This will be called. Oh, this will work. Oh, that works because of the in the older instructions. I said to name the project test. That's why when the plugin built the object, it created this test servlet. This time we're creating a jQuery servlet. So we need to modify that. That should be jQuery, and that means this is modified as well. It should be jQuery. All right. So this is test servlet. This should be jQuery servlet. jQuery servlet. And this is the URL. Oh, what did I do there? This should be text. This is text, and this is jQuery. Okay, all right. So, do I need to modify anything else? This is change the URL from test. This should be jQuery. To a path. There we go. Okay. Yeah, save those changes. So what we're doing is we're telling jQuery to get this document and paste it into, the contents, the text contents of this element message. So let's see how that works. I'm going to save this. And remember, when you save changes to your JavaScript, you need to reload the web page. I don't need that window. So I'm going to reload the web page. Let's click Get Message. Before I click Get Message, I want to show you that if we go to jQuery, it says Hello World, okay? So that's in fact what it retrieves, and the browser can directly request that. But what we're doing is we're having jQuery
run. It's to retrieve the that web page and replace the contents of this paragraph with what it gets. Let's try that. We'll click Get Message, and nothing happens. What happened? Did I get anything in the console? Oh, not found. 404 test. What's going on there? Did I not reload? Let me reload. Try that again. It's still giving me that error message. 888 test not found. I thought I modified that. This, oh, son of a gun. This should be jQuery. Oh, sorry. Let's go back. And just to show you what's going on there once again, that the script that is in there now, which is old, says load test, and that's the bug. Oops, sorry about that. And what am I doing here? I need to plug in. So I'm going to hit get message. Oh, I need to reload. Let's reload. Now I hit get message, and there it is, hello world. So that's what's happening there. All right, let's continue on here. So we see what the load method is doing here. And actually, we were pretty much close to the end of this this assignment. There are two exercises which you should do, and then maybe what I'll do is I'll stop at this point, and that's it. I think is that it? I think that's it. Is there anything else I need to talk about? I think that's basically it. All right.